All right, so today we're diving deep into this idea of not giving a feck.
Oh, yeah.
And this is based on Mark Manson's book,
Right.
which kind of blew up a few years ago.
Mm-hmm.
But it's really interesting because
It is.
when you first hear the title,
Yeah.
you think, oh, this is going to be one of those self-help books.
Exactly.
But it's really not.
No, not at all.
It takes kind of a counterintuitive
Yeah.
approach to a lot of this stuff.
Yeah, for sure. And I think what's so refreshing about it is he's not telling us to, chase this constant state of positivity.
Right.
Or like pretend everything's perfect and,
Toxic positivity.
Yeah, exactly. Toxic positivity. It's like
Yeah.
life is going to suck sometimes.
Right.
It's about figuring out what you're going to care about
Right.
when it does suck.
Exactly. So we need to be choosy about what we give a feck about.
Yes, exactly.
And, I mean, one of the examples that always comes to mind is,
Yeah.
he talks about Charles Bukowski, the poet, who kind of reveled in this image of being like a loser.
Right. Yeah, he embraced
Alcoholic,
this, like you said, this persona of being a total, like, down-and-out loser.
I mean, think, like, how is that a path to success?
Well, and that's the funny thing is, like, despite all that he found success, he found, literary.
Yeah, he found an audience.
He found an audience. And I think part of that is because he was so unapologetically himself.
Right.
He wasn't trying to be something. He wasn't.
Right.
It was just like, this is me, warts and all.
Yeah.
Take it or leave it.
And people are like, we'll take it.
Yeah.
Which is really interesting because it's kind of the opposite of what we're told today, right? Like, you got to have the perfect job. You got to have the perfect image.
The perfect Instagram feed.
Your perfect Instagram feed. Yeah, all of that.
Yeah. And that's just setting us up for failure.
Yeah.
Because nobody is perfect.
Right.
Nobody has it all figured out. And when we're constantly chasing this ideal of perfection.
Right. We're just setting ourselves up for disappointment. And it's going to lead to what he calls this feedback loop from hell.
I love that the feedback loop from hell.
Right.
I mean, we've all experienced this in different areas of our lives.
I think so.
It's like that thing where you start getting anxious.
Yes.
And then you get anxious about being anxious.
Oh, my God. Yes. Like meta anxiety.
Yeah. And it's like a spiral.
Totally. It just like feeds on itself.
Yeah. It's like once you get on that hamster wheel.
Exactly.
It's so hard to get off.
Yeah.
So what's the solution then? If we buy into this idea of not giving a feck, does that mean we just ignore our problems?
Not exactly.
Okay.
It's more about shifting our perspective on how we relate to our problems. So it's not about ignoring them. It's about choosing which ones deserve our energy.
Okay. So it's like we're going to have problems no matter what.
Exactly. Life is problems.
But we get to choose.
You get to choose.
Which ones we're going to expend energy on. Yeah. Which ones we're going to give our facts to.
Right. Okay.
And to help illustrate this, he introduces this concept of the disappointment panda.
I love the disappointment panda.
I know, right?
It's such a great visual.
So just picture this panda, right? Like a cute, cuddly panda.
All right.
But he's wearing this, like, ill-fitting superhero costume.
Okay.
And his superpower is to tell you the harsh truths that you need to hear.
Okay.
But you don't necessarily want to hear.
Okay, so this is like the friend who's brutally honest with you.
Yes, exactly. The friend who's going to tell it like it is.
Okay.
No sugarcoating.
No sugarcoating, just straight up truth.
Just straight up truth.
I like it.
And, it might be disappointing at first.
Right.
But ultimately, it's going to help you grow.
Okay, so how does the disappointment panda help us figure out which problems to actually focus on?
Well, think about it like physical pain, right?
Right.
Nobody enjoys physical pain, but it serves a purpose.
Right? It's a signal.
It's a signal that something's wrong.
Yeah.
It's your body's way of saying, hey, pay attention to this.
Right.
Something needs to change.
Like a check engine light.
Exactly like a check engine light.
Don't ignore it.
Don't ignore it. Figure out what's causing it and fix it.
Right.
And emotional pain is kind of similar.
Okay.
Instead of trying to avoid those negative feelings, we can use them as information.
Yeah.
They're pointing us to areas in our lives that maybe need some attention.
Okay.
Maybe some change.
So it's not about being happy all the time.
No, not at all.
It's about figuring out how to use those negative emotions.
Exactly.
To make positive changes.
To fuel positive change and growth.
Okay. I like it.
Yeah.
So we've got to choose the right problems to give a fuck about.
Right.
But how do we figure out, like, what are the right problems?
That brings us to another important point, and that's about choosing the right values and metrics for measuring success and happiness.
Okay, so it's not just about solving problems.
Right.
It's About solving the right problems based on
Exactly.
what actually matters to
On what truly matters to you
Okay.
and what aligns with your values.
Okay.
And I think a great example of this is there was this woman I knew who was incredibly driven in her corporate career.
Okay.
She was like climbing the ladder, getting
A
promotions.
classic corporate ladder.
Yeah, exactly. But she was deeply unfulfilled.
Okay.
Like she had all the things
Right.
that she thought she should want.
But it wasn't what she actually wanted.
Exactly. Her metrics for success were misaligned with her true values.
Got it.
So it was only when she took a step back and asked herself, what do I actually care about?
Right.
That she realized her passions lay elsewhere. And she eventually left the corporate world.
Wow.
And found true happiness.
So she redefined what success meant for her.
Exactly.
That's pretty brave.
It is. And that's a huge part of Manson's message.
Okay.
It's about having the courage to define your own values, to choose your own metrics for success.
Okay.
And not letting external expectations dictate your path.
I like it.
Yeah.
It's like forging your own path.
It is. It's about taking ownership of your life and your happiness.
Yeah, it's so easy to get caught up in like what everybody else is doing.
Oh, totally.
And comparing ourselves and...
Comparison is the thief of joy.
Right.
They say.
And you end up chasing these things that you don't even really care about.
Exactly. And I think that's where the whole idea of personal responsibility comes in.
Okay. Yeah.
And Manson doesn't shy away from the tough topics.
Right.
And one that really stood out to me was his whole take on responsibility.
Yeah, I think that was one of the most impactful parts of the book for me, too.
For sure.
It really kind of shifted my perspective on things.
Well, and he makes this really important distinction between taking responsibility and taking blame.
Okay, yeah, that's a good point.
And he uses a pretty personal example to illustrate this.
Oh, yeah.
He talks about his own experience of being cheated on.
Oof, that's got to be rough.
Yeah, it's a tough one. But initially,
Right.
He was devastated, and understandably so.
Right.
He blamed his girlfriend.
Right.
But, as he kind of worked through it, he realized that while she was responsible for her actions,
Right.
she wasn't responsible for his happiness.
Okay.
He had to own that himself.
So he shifted his focus from like blaming her
Exactly.
to like taking control of his own emotional response.
Exactly. He couldn't control her actions,
Right.
But he could control how he reacted and how he moved forward.
And it sounds like he took some positive steps.
He did. He really focused on taking care of himself.
Okay.
Reconnecting with friends. He actually took a study abroad trip.
Wow.
Yeah, he kind of channeled that pain into positive action.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's a really powerful example of how even when something terrible happens to us, we still have the power to choose how we respond.
It's like learning to surf.
What do you mean?
Like you can't control the waves.
Right.
But you can control how you ride them.
Yeah, that's a great analogy.
So it's not about suppressing those negative emotions. It's about acknowledging them.
Exactly.
And then choosing how we respond.
Choosing how you respond and using them as fuel for growth.
Right.
Rather than letting them consume you.
So we've got to acknowledge the wave.
Yes.
But then decide how we're going to surf it.
I like that.
And Manson actually, he talks about this in another context too.
Okay.
Where he gives an example of a father who lost his son.
Right. A really heartbreaking situation.
Yeah. And in that situation, it's like blame feels almost irrelevant. It's just pure grief.
Pure grief and loss.
And so in that situation, it's not about who's at fault. It's about how you move forward.
Exactly. And Manson emphasizes that this father wasn't to blame for his son's death, but he still had to choose how to move forward.
Right.
How to live with that loss.
Wow.
It's a really powerful reminder that even when circumstances are beyond our control, we still have a choice in how we respond.
And it's not about being like stoic and just like not acknowledging the pain.
No, not at all.
It's about like realizing that even in really, really difficult circumstances, we still have the power.
You still have agency.
To choose our response.
That's powerful.
Yeah. And this whole idea of like choice and taking responsibility, it actually ties into another concept that Manson talks about a lot, which is the importance of challenging our beliefs.
Oh, yeah. That's a big one.
Because sometimes the beliefs that we're holding on to might actually be holding us back.
Absolutely. And he makes the point that certainty can actually be the enemy of growth.
So we can get so attached to our beliefs that we stop questioning them.
Yes. We become closed off.
We get stuck in our own little echo chambers.
Exactly, filtering out anything that challenges our worldview, which isn't helpful.
No, because then we're not open to learning new things.
Exactly, and he describes this fascinating experiment.
Okay.
Where people were put in a room with buttons.
Okay.
And they were told to figure out the sequence that would make a light flash.
Okay.
But here's the thing.
Yeah.
There was no pattern.
What? So there wasn't even a correct answer?
No, the light flashed randomly.
Oh, wow.
But the participants were convinced they had figured it out.
No way.
They created meaning out of pure randomness.
Wow. So we like to find patterns.
We do, even when they don't exist.
Even when they're not really there.
Right.
Yet.
And it's kind of like what we do in life sometimes.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
We cling to these beliefs.
Yeah.
Even if they're not based on evidence or logic.
Yeah, because it feels more comfortable.
Sometimes a comforting lie is easier to swallow than a challenging truth.
And I feel like this is where the disappointment panda can be helpful again.
It gives a clutch.
Yeah, like giving us that dose of...
That dose of reality?
reality.
Yeah, to help us question our assumptions.
Mm-hmm.
Be willing to be wrong.
Okay.
And, maybe seek out evidence that contradicts our beliefs.
It's like you can't learn anything new if you're always right.
Exactly. And this openness to being wrong.
Right.
To revising our beliefs as we get new information.
Yeah.
It's essential for personal growth.
Yeah.
It allows us to adapt,
mm-hmm.
to learn from our mistakes,
yeah.
and to evolve.
So embracing uncertainty can actually make us more resilient.
I think so, because when we cling to certainty, we become brittle.
Okay.
We're less able to cope with the unexpected.
With curveballs.
Exactly.
Because life is full of curveballs.
It is. Life is unpredictable.
And I think it's interesting when you look at historical examples.
Yeah.
There's this story of this Japanese soldier, Hiru Onoda.
Oh, yeah.
Who continued fighting World War II.
Decades after it ended.
Yeah, literally for decades.
Because he refused to believe.
Yeah, he refused to believe that the war was over.
That's wild.
It's crazy.
Right. He was so committed to his mission.
Yeah.
That he rejected any information.
That contradicted his belief.
Yeah, that didn't fit into his narrative.
That's crazy.
It took him almost 30 years.
30 years.
To finally surrender.
Wow.
It's kind of a tragic story, but also fascinating.
Yeah, because it shows the power of belief.
The power of belief and how our beliefs can shape our reality.
Yeah.
Even when they're out of sync with the actual world.
Okay, so it's important to challenge those beliefs.
Yeah.
And make sure...
To be open to new information.
They're still serving us.
Even when it's uncomfortable.
Right. And this leads us to another interesting idea from the book.
Okay.
Which is the importance of rejection.
Rejection.
Yeah. Now, before you, run for the hills...
Yeah, that sounds scary.
I know, right? Rejection.
Yeah, who wants that?
But Manson makes a really compelling case for why rejection is actually essential for growth.
Okay. I'm listening.
I mean, it's counterintuitive, right?
It is.
You think rejection is always a bad thing?
Yeah, you want to avoid it at all costs.
Right, exactly. But Manson's saying, actually...
It can be a good thing.
Yeah, it can be a tool.
A tool for growth.
Okay, so how does that work?
Well, he starts by kind of deconstructing this whole romanticized notion of love.
Right, like the fairy tale.
Yeah, the fairy tale, the Romeo and Juliet.
The happily ever after.
Yeah, the can't live without you kind of love.
The all-consuming passion.
Exactly. And he argues that this kind of love, it's often unhealthy.
Okay.
And unsustainable.
Because it's you're trying to escape yourself.
Exactly. It's about escaping yourself, avoiding your problems through this intense emotion, rather than actually facing them.
So it's more about using the relationship as a crutch.
Yeah, like a distraction.
Than actually facing your own stuff.
Right. And he contrasts that with healthy love.
Okay.
Which is about two individuals supporting each other as they each work through their own challenges.
Okay, so it's two whole people.
Two whole people.
Coming together.
Yes.
Not two halves trying to make a whole.
Exactly.
Okay.
And a key element of that healthy love is boundaries.
Right. Boundaries, being able to say no.
Exactly. Being able to say no both to yourself and to your partner.
So rejection becomes a way of protecting your values.
It's a way of making sure that you're not sacrificing your own needs.
For the sake of the relationship.
For the sake of the relationship.
Okay.
And this applies to all relationships, by the way.
Oh, right. Not just romantic ones.
No friends, family work relationships.
Yeah, because sometimes you got to say no to that extra project.
Exactly. You got to set those boundaries.
Yeah, and it can be so hard.
It can be really hard, especially...
I know.
especially like in a work context or...
Right, where you want to please people.
Yeah, you want to be seen as helpful.
Yeah.
But sometimes saying no is the most helpful thing you can do.
For yourself.
For yourself, exactly.
So how does saying no lead to greater freedom, like Manson talks about?
Well, he makes this interesting point that when we commit to something,
Okay.
whether it's a relationship, a career path, we're also rejecting alternatives.
Okay.
Right.
Right.
Like if you choose to focus on writing a book, you're saying no to all the other things
that you could be doing with your time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that can be incredibly liberating.
It's like decluttering.
It is like decluttering your life.
But not just your physical space.
Your mental and emotional space as well.
Okay, I like that.
And by consciously rejecting those alternatives, we free up our energy to really engage.
Fully commit.
Fully commit to the things we've chosen.
Okay, so rejection becomes a way of focusing.
Yeah, it's about intentionality.
Intentionality, yeah.
Choosing what matters and letting go of the rest.
Okay, I'm starting to see the power of no.
Right. It's not always a bad thing.
Yeah.
And speaking of embracing the unconventional,
okay,
Manson doesn't shy away from the big one death.
Yeah, this is where it gets real deep.
It does. He shares this really personal story about the death of his friend Josh.
Right.
And it's a really powerful part of the book.
Because it forces you to confront
your own mortality.
Yeah, something that most of us try to avoid.
Big time. But Manson argues that acknowledging our mortality, while uncomfortable, can actually be a source of liberation.
Okay. I'm curious, how does that work?
Well, he connects this to the work of Ernest Becker, who studied how we cope with the fear of death.
Right, because, I mean, it's like a primal fear, right?
It is.
Nobody wants to die.
Right, and Becker found that we create these immortality projects.
Immortality projects?
Yeah, things we do to leave a legacy. To feel like we'll live on.
After we're gone.
Exactly like having children. Building a business, writing a book.
Creating something that will outlast us.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's a natural human impulse.
Right.
But Becker also realized that these projects can become a problem if we get too attached to them.
So it's not about denying that desire for legacy.
Right. It's about finding a healthy relationship with it.
Exactly. Manson suggests that the key is to acknowledge our mortality. To embrace the fact that our time is limited.
Right.
But to also choose values that give our lives meaning.
Without being consumed by them.
Exactly. It's about finding that balance.
Okay, so accepting death, but not letting it paralyze us.
Right. Using that awareness to fuel our choices.
To focus on what really matters.
You live more authentically.
Yeah, and I love how he illustrates this with that story.
Oh, yeah.
About hiking to the edge of a cliff.
At the Cape of Good Hope.
Yeah, and he's like looking out at this vast ocean.
Yeah.
Feeling both terrified and exhilarated.
Wow, that sounds intense.
It does. It's a powerful image of confronting your own mortality.
And it makes you think about your place in the world.
It does. He talks about how this experience brought him face to face with that question of what is my legacy?
How will I make a difference?
Yeah, how will the world be different?
Because I was here.
Exactly. And that's a question we all grapple with.
Yeah, and I think that's a great place to kind of wrap up this whole conversation. Because ultimately, I think what Manson is saying is that our legacy isn't about achieving some grand level of fame or fortune.
It's not about the external markers.
It's about the choices we make every day.
The small things.
Yeah, the small acts of kindness.
The moments of courage.
The times we show up authentically.
Yeah. Those are the things that really matter.
Those are the things that make a difference.
And it's not about trying to change the whole world.
Right.
It's about making a positive impact.
In your own little corner of the world.
Exactly. It can be as simple as making someone smile.
Right. Or helping someone in need.
Or just being present for someone.
Yeah, just being there.
Yeah, those little things add up.
And I think that's a really empowering message.
It is, because it means that we all have the power to make a difference.
Regardless of our circumstances.
Exactly. And I love how Manson puts it. He says, you are already great simply by virtue of being alive.
Wow.
And making choices in a world full of uncertainty.
I love that it's like we don't need...
You don't need external validation.
You'd be worthy.
Your worth comes from simply existing.
Yeah, from being part of this human experience.
From being you.
Yeah, and I think that's a really beautiful message.
It's a reminder that we're all inherently valuable.
And that by embracing our imperfections...
By owning our choices.
And focusing on what truly matters.
We can create a life that's both meaningful and fulfilling.
So as we leave you with all of this to ponder,
yes,
here's a final thought to chew on.
Okay, hit me. What legacy will you leave behind?
Ooh, that's a good one.
How will the world be different?
Yeah.
And better?
Because you were here.
It's a big question.
It is, but it's worth asking.
Yeah, so take some time to reflect on that.
Yeah, and until next time.
Keep questioning, keep exploring.
And keep choosing what you give a feck about.